Welcome to the Deconstructed Woman podcast, a podcast about breaking down barriers between women, exploring and sharing perspectives of each individual woman's experience, and discovering what we have in common and what makes us different. Hosted by Elisa Marie and Joji. Welcome back to the Deconstructed Woman podcast. Today, we're going to continue the conversation from last week about things that we let go. So if you haven't been able to listen to that episode, circle back because we have 10 things that in our lives we can let go of. And we went through 1 through 5. And today we're going to start on number 6 and kind of go through talking about how this has impacted both Joji and I and what that looks like. So Joji, I'm going to hand it over to you to tell us what number 6 is and continue the conversation.
Okay. And so just to put it into perspective, we're talking about things that we wait too long to let go of in our lives. And number 6 is the desire for quick and easy results. So I think this is something that many of us fall into. And I remember what this makes me think about is when I've had many conversations with my girlfriends over the years, and we always talk about how hard it is to lose weight, except for if you were a celebrity. And like poor Oprah, I feel bad for her because, she had a chef, and a lot of celebrities and models have chefs. And I guess my girlfriends and I would sit around and talk about, how easy it is for them because they can afford to have somebody cook them only nutritious meals and the right portion size and all that kind of stuff. And I think that what that undercuts is the fact that you still have to live by those portions, right? You can't snack, you can't do that. But we, I think, try to displace blame away from maybe ourselves and the choices we make and say, well, this person has it easier because they have all this stuff done for them and they don't really have to think about anything. They just have to, respond to what they're given. I'm not sure that that's a worthy excuse because it isn't until you get a handle on your own stuff that you're able to really change those behaviors. But that was the immediate example that came to my mind. How about you, Alyssa? Things that you find you wish that were easier and you want it to be done quickly, but that you've had to learn that it does take time and patience and good decisions.
Yeah, I mean, the one that I'm in the most right now, it kind of comes off of the podcast that we did about like mindfulness and parenting. That's something that I really struggle with. And it's not a quick and easy process to not necessarily be mindful, but just to like regulate myself so I can help my kids regulate themselves. It's a work in progress. Like I think I have these conversations with my friends probably weekly of like, I get really overwhelmed and frustrated, but I have to learn to be able to calm myself down so I can help them calm down, even though in the moment I've asked them 17 times to put their shoes on. So we're trying to get out the door or whatever the circumstances are. It's like, okay, I have to stop and take a deep breath and tell myself, like, this is not the end of the world. So that for me is something that is not, it's an ongoing process and there's not a quick and easy fix. Like, I wish there was an easy way to be able to say, like, this is how you calm down when, you're on overload and you're managing 45 different things, but there isn't a quick and easy fix for that. It really is a process of changing, essentially, in my mind, like changing neural pathways of what I'm so used to something different. So whether it's mindfulness or just emotional regulation, those sorts of things, they take time. But I wish there was a quick fix because I wish that I didn't fall back into old habits so quickly. And I was better able to just kind of flip a switch and say, okay, whew, I'm going to be calm now. So that's one for me. I think that the weight loss is another good example of that. And I'm sure there's many, many examples that we can pull from. But I think that, quick and easy fixes, I mean, there's entire industries built on the idea of that, from gambling to dieting. There's just so many ways that people want to get, that instant gratification. But the reality is that anything that's worth it, does take time and effort. And I think that that makes it hard because you don't see instant results. But, I've heard a quote the other day. Somebody had said, like, do you plant a seed and expect it to be, a flower the next day? No, nobody expects that. You anticipate and expect that it's going to take time for something to grow. And yet in our lives, we so frequently think that things can happen quickly or overnight, and that's just not the case.
Yeah, I love that imagery since I'm a gardener of the seed to the flower. Matter of fact, yeah, it was something that I was looking at because as I'm starting to think about planting my seeds for the spring, like some plants like petunias take 12 weeks to get to a place where you want to plant them outside, whereas like tomatoes take, 6 to 8 weeks. And so just also being able to get the timing of that. And so when you think about why, absolutely to your point, we don't expect to plant a seed in dirt and a flower to pop up. We expect it to go through all the different phases of growth. And yet we don't have that, kind of timetable for ourselves when, especially when we're changing very difficult habits, right? Things that are ingrained in us or that we've learned from the generation before us. So I think that's a remarkable example for me. So thank you for that. Number seven is self doubt. And, so many of these ideas that we're talking about seem to really be specific to women. And self doubt is something that also really applies to women in terms of how it just really wears away at us. And we think that, we're exempt from that, but we're not. And we have a lot of self doubt that creeps over us. And it's really trying to keep the self doubt at bay. And because if you don't do that, then what this article is talking about is that it will lead to hopelessness, or it'll lead to, depression if you let it overwhelm you. And so I know that as women, we are we easily fall prey to self-doubt. And I think self-doubt and I think society reinforces some of that or, plants those seeds in us that, make us feel that way from a very young age. And then it just continues to sort of snowball as we get into our teenage years and then early adulthood. And then, obviously as we develop over time. And so I think it is like anything else where you have to practice being able to really talk yourself off the edge, away from the edge, and really understand yourself and the challenge that you're facing. What is your perspective, Alyssa, about self doubt?
I mean, I would agree with everything that you said. And I think that it's something that I think everyone struggles with. I think for some people more so than others. But it really does kind of distort your reality when you're having those moments where you're doubting, am I good enough? Am I able to do this type of situation? And so I think that there's a lot that goes into that. But I definitely think that there's a lot that it's hard to overcome that so quickly when you're in that state.
Yep, absolutely. It's definitely one that challenges many of us on a regular basis. Number eight, and this one is a little bit more challenging, and I just had recent conversations about number, this exact point is daily relationships that make us feel less like ourselves. And, this is something that I just recently talked to a girlfriend about yesterday, and it was about relationships that either are trying to change who we are or want us to be more like them or just trying to, even sometimes it's about toxic relationships that you need to let go of in your life that no longer really serve you. And so it's a challenge because it's hard to give up on old relationships that we've had for a long time that bring us comfort or they're very familiar to us. But if there is someone who's doing more harm than good in our life, then I think it's also something that we need to let go of. This touches a little bit about, we did a whole episode on pruning relationships and friendships. And this is, some of that definitely applies to this, but I think it's really about, letting people accept you for who you are, having a mutual relationship with a person so they accept you when you set boundaries and maybe are not willing to change or don't agree with them all the time and having that space for that sort of 50-50 relationship. Well, any new thoughts on this since we talked about pruning friendships, Alyssa?
Yeah, I was gonna quote that because I actually there was a recent somebody had posted in one of my Facebook groups, and I actually linked the episode because I said, that is so much so uh what they were talking about. But I think that it also includes, like you said, those toxic relationships. I think for me, like I decided that 2024 was a year I was just gonna be honest with the people around me and be more honest about my thoughts and things because sometimes I shied away from that. And what I'm finding is that's very hard to do. And it's not only being honest with other people, but also being honest with myself about what relationships I want to keep and which ones I want to maybe end. So if you haven't listened to the episode, it's a great discussion because we talk about like the challenges of that. But I also think that I mean, it's easier said than done. So, we're not sitting here saying, yeah, just prune your relationships and you'll be better off. I have a really hard time with letting go of friendships, even though I can easily recognize that they are not healthy or not the best for me. And I think that just stems from like a desire to have people like me and to not really have to get into too much conflict if I can avoid it. Mainly in my personal life. In my professional life, I'm okay with conflict, constructive criticism, however that shows up. But in my personal life, I hold very strongly to the people around me. And so, I mean, I have made efforts to kind of minimize who I let into my like inner circle. And I mean it's only February, but already in 2024 I've kind of faltered or fell back into old habits of like telling people intimate things and then being like, oh, I wish I didn't say that, or I wish I didn't, put that out there. Um and again, we kind of have those moments and like I let somebody into my inner circle that I really didn't want to be part of this, but like here we are. So again, I think that it's a process and it's hard. But I think that eventually if I continue to work at it, eventually I can circle myself with people who really help me to, reach my potential.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so difficult to do because, maybe the other person feels like the two of you have a mutually fulfilling relationship. And it's hard for them to hear sometimes that, you're not getting out of it what you'd like or such. And though they're very, very difficult. But then I think there's also, this article sort of goes on to saying it's easier to fill an empty space in your life where someone else used to be than it is to fill an empty space inside yourself where you used to be. And so I think the point being that when we allow people in our lives that prevent us from being our authentic self, then we lose sight of who we are. And then we have relationships that not only do they not fill sort of, our bank, but we also don't know who we are and it gets so diluted. So it is a really important point. And I think there's much to be gained from really evaluating the friendships and the other relationships in your life. Number 9, I mean, this one is a little bit of a challenge to me. I guess I'm trying to think about it. It's old life chapters that are still lingering half open. So I'm trying to think about what those are. I guess the first thing that comes to my mind are those individuals that I hear about that still are reliving their glory days from high school or college. I'm not a person like that. I really hated high school and I was happy to be done with college. So I can't say that. I don't know if it's like they really talk about like a first love or somebody like that, maybe your first job, maybe something that was really, really meaningful that you felt so successful in or so loved that you're not able to move past that is really what they're talking about. Um, can you relate to that, Alyssa, or have other examples that resonate more with you?
I mean, I think the like first love, I think that a lot of times, people kind of fall into that pattern of what if I had stayed with that person? So I can kind of see it from that perspective, though. I know that, people think like the grass is greener on the other side. And then it's like, uh, I think a really easy way to counter that is to be like, well, you know what? Who knows what that person's like now? So I can see that perspective. I think, for me, like there were certain career goals that I had for myself. Like I thought I was going to go in one direction and I chose a different direction. And so again, kind of going back to those what ifs, like what if I had, gone into the FBI, which was like a goal for me when I was in undergraduate school. Like I wanted to be in the FBI. And I'm still a very like law abiding individual because of that, like that mentality. But I think that, you know, uh, when I hit my 35th birthday, which is the cutoff before the FBI, that was like me closing that chapter because it was like, okay, I can't, that's not going to happen. Again, I think for people, maybe that's part of it too, is just having those previous dreams or ideals of like what they thought their life was going to be like, and then kind of realizing, but this is the path that you took. And so, you got here. And if you look at, I think it goes back to gratitude too, of like, okay, I have all of this in front of me. This is where my life is. What if I had done this? But instead shifting to, okay, I'm going to close that chapter. I'm going to let that go and be grateful for what I have now. So I think that it can come in a lot of different forms. I'm curious to hear what other people, how that shows up for them, because I think that that probably is going to resonate with some people that are listening in to say, yeah, to let go of that chapter that I've kind of moved on. I think that I think if you feel settled in where you are in your phase of life and you're happy, like that's the main goal. But I think that it is a really good point that we need to let go of those kind of old expectations for ourselves so that we can kind of live in the moment and kind of go forward too.
And I think you make a really important point about living in the present. And I think that is such an important point to highlight because when you live in the past, that's that's really not living. You can't change the past, you can't impact anything that's going on. And if you invest a lot of time and energy into something that isn't actively part of your present day, then it just seems like such a misspent time and a lack of value associated with what you can do with that. And so I do think that living in the moment and being in the present and also not setting yourself up for anxiety and depression. Because if everything good that happened to you was in the past, then what does that mean for your current and your future? And so I do feel like there are people that I've met that are stuck at a certain time in their life and they almost resent the present day because they compare it to what seemed better. And I just feel like those individuals are just almost hopeless and really don't have any hope for the future. And so I do think that that's really, really important, Alyssa. And I'm really glad that you mentioned that because it's so significant. And to sort of put the exclamation point on it, the article says it takes a brave person to know when that chapter is over and then to turn the page. And finally, it says, be brave. And I think that's just a beautiful ending to that paragraph in terms of what does that mean for us. And number 10 is the belief that we always need more than we have. And I know this is something that's really going to resonate with you, Alyssa, as it does me. I know you're going to think about decluttering. So I'm going to let you talk about decluttering or however this resonated with you. I hate to cede your conversation, but in terms of always needing more than we have.
I mean, I'm over here laughing because I'm like, yep, that's me. It's just it's an interesting concept because I think that prior to, and again, I don't remember when I started my decluttering like journey, but prior to that, I really did feel like I needed more and more. And the woman that I follow, there's a couple of different people, but the decluttered mom and I'm on like minimalism groups on Facebook and stuff like that. So I'm kind of like engulfed in it. But a lot of them say like, a lot of people who talk about this, like they say they felt like they were drowning in their stuff. And I think that we do have that experience where we're just like surrounded by things and we think that that will make us feel better, but it really it takes up mental space. And the mental space, if we're already taxed out, which I mean, I work full time, I have 4 kids, I have a lot on my plate. I feel kind of, I can get easily overwhelmed by all the things, both physical and mental things. And so for me, the easiest thing, the one thing I can control is the physical stuff. And so that's why I kind of focus so much of my time on that. Um, because I think that a lot of times I want to get more toys for my kids. I want to, oh, we need more clothes. We need this. We need that. Um, but the reality is you really don't need much to really function. I think that there's this like misperception that you need a lot of things to be happy. And so I would challenge people to, to look at that. Do you feel like your home is chaotic? Do you feel like maybe, there's some people who are like, I don't have enough stuff. Um, but I think that most people can look around and say, yeah, I got plenty of stuff here. And, you know, the idea of more is just kind of a very like consumerist like concept. Like that's something that was just kind of ingrained in us from very early on, like commercials and things like that. And so it's counterintuitive to that piece of it. But I will say that that's where it comes from is the idea that I am hopeful. I have seen it in some ways, but my hope is that in having less things, I will have more. I will have more time and less things that I have to pick up, less things that I have to organize or situate, and therefore my life will be more simple, and that's my goal.
I will say the way that this resonates with me has a lot to do with wanting more in terms of my career and like proving that I am worthy and successful. And it's taken me a long time to relax. Like in so many parts of so many years, I thought, oh, I always have a 5-year plan. And that means, getting another promotion or taking on this or doing that. And it was always like, oh, I feel good because I have a 5-year plan. And it's always about moving up this ladder. And then one of the things my husband said to me very early on in our marriage was, but when you are always seeking the next level, you don't have an opportunity to appreciate what you have because you're always looking for the next thing. And I really had to spend many years sort of meditating on that because I was raised or I thought it was good or um, I was reinforced for that behavior, for that next level to constantly be striving, keeping up with the Joneses, and if I was, quote unquote, only going to be a social worker, I was going to be the best social worker there was, or I was going to be in private practice, or I was going to have, X amount of clients or whatever. And it really creates sort of a vicious cycle of it's never enough. And I think that that's where I was able to take a break from that and say, you know what, I do really appreciate this work I'm doing. And I think I really started to look at it differently and appreciate the things I'm impacting by being where I am and wholly owning that this is a good place to be instead of always looking forward to the next level. And so it has been a shift for me. And sometimes I wonder if I'm too comfortable and if I'm too settled and I need to have a little bit more of what I had in the past. But for right now, I feel like, I'm in a good place and I have to be very honest about if I am looking for the next level, why am I doing that? Is it really about keeping up with the Joneses or feeling valued? Or is it really because there's a legitimate reason for doing something different than I'm doing? And so, in my mind, it's always been about my career and sort of feeling settled and being happy and feeling proud of where I am in my career. So, a little bit different than decluttering, but definitely has been a challenge for me for most of my life. And that is really easy to say. Now, I really like where this article goes from here, and it says, how to practice letting go when life tests you. And so, of course, we know we have to let go of these 10 things. We know that, this conversation is very, very meaningful. But what happens, when you you can't let go? And what they talk about in this is to acknowledge that the tension inside of you. So if you feel like you're getting angry and flustered then it's probably an opportunity to take a break and sort of center yourself. Resist the urge to act in haste. And so I think that when we're feeling anxious or we want, we make hasty decisions, it's because the anxiety is sort of forcing us to make a decision, take a behavior, and not just sit with it. And so you sort of have to fight that impulse and you have to sort of, take a moment, sit with it, and really understand what is your true direction that you want to go into. The other thing, this is something very, very difficult to do, which is sit with your feelings and give them space. So really to the point of, uh, once again, letting that, and Lisa Sprague talked about this in our in meditation sessions. She said, let those feelings wash over you. They're not more powerful than you are, and giving them the space to live inside of you to know that they can be contained and that you will then make a good decision is such a life skill to do. Um, and the last thing they talk about is, be okay with not knowing. Sometimes you want to make a quick decision and then you allow yourself to do that, but it may not be the right decision. And you don't do it from a place of an authentic, decision making. You do it because it's fast, it's easy, it's something that you can check off your list, but it's not the right thing to do. And so give yourself the space and forgiveness to let the decision arrive when the time is right for it to arrive, not because you're just pushing through and wanting to, get it done and over with, and move on to the next thing. And it is so challenging to do that, but it is really an exercise in patience for yourself. So I know I sort of ran through those things. Alyssa, I want to give you the opportunity to speak to any of the things that you like to talk about, acknowledging the tension inside of you, resisting the urge to act in haste. Sit with your feelings, give them space, and be okay with not knowing. Any or all of those resonate with you? And if you have anything you want to talk about with those,
I mean, I think that they're all just really good continuations of this whole article. I mean, I really love the idea. And if you could cite the article again, just so that everybody, anybody who wants to read it can. But I think that they're, again, just a continuation of this whole conversation, these two episodes, as we're talking about things that are challenging to let go, but that we really should. And I think we kind of came full circle, um, acknowledging your feelings, being in the present. We kind of gave our two perspectives on all 10 items. But I think that there's definitely worth here to just reflecting on that and being able to say, yeah, these are some things. And I think it was interesting because some of them resonated more with me and some resonated more with you. And so again, just to kind of put it out there for our listeners to let us know which ones resonated with you, and which ones are you maybe saying to yourself? I mean, again, we're in February, so which ones are you going to maybe let go for this year? And I would also acknowledge that, similar to what we were just talking about, nothing happens quickly overnight. Maybe you only pick one or two for this year, maybe only one thing that you let go of for the year. And that's not a failure. That's maybe the reality of where you're at in life. So if there's one thing you want to let go of, maybe start with one of these 10, but at the same time, it's not written in stone that you have to do it a certain way or at a certain time or in a certain order. I think that it's really left to wherever you are kind of meeting you there and going from there.
and a good reminder, Alyssa, for me to repeat the article and the citation. And this is 10 Things We Often Wait Too Long to Let Go of in Life, written by Angel Chernoff. And this is the Mark and Angel Hack Life blog post. And you can find it at Mark, spelled MARC, and angel.com. And it is a really good blog that talks about a lot of the kinds of things that we talk about. And so just want to make sure that they get the credit for this wonderful article and allowed us to give something to talk about. So as we close out this second session of this very weighty topic, want to hear from you guys and want to hear from people at all different stages and different people who different ones of these 10 resonated with you. Please do give us feedback. Some of you text us individually that know us very well. Some of you will put a comment on the Facebook page, which is the Deconstructed Woman Facebook podcast community. And then there's also our Gmail address at the deconstructedwoman@gmail.com. This is Joji and Alyssa Marie signing off for today. And we hope to hear from you soon. And thank you for subscribing. And if you haven't, please subscribe so you're notified when our new podcasts arrive. Thanks so much. Goodbye for now. Thank you for listening to our podcast, The Deconstructed Woman. If you liked this podcast, please share it with your friends, rate this episode, or subscribe to be notified of all new content. We want to hear from you, our listener. Do you have thoughts on the discussions we're having? Want to share topic suggestions? Or want to join us for a topic that you're passionate about? Contact us at our email address, thedeconstructedwoman@gmail.com.